And
This one is copper, but this one is antique amber.
No.
You telling me?
Hey, I've been in this business. I'm 77.
I say, this is antique amber. I know, that's it. This come from my country. This is from Benin. And
This?
Yes.
It's from the 1950s.
Look here. This one is antique amber. So you talk about amber. I'm from Africa. I know what is copper, and I know what is real amber. Okay. That's what I do.
Museums and the antique roadshow hire me.
Yeah, I know. But I do
authenticate.
teach too about African art, antique, vintage, and whatever is the new art. I do.
Okay, how much?
Okay, let me see, 15 and 10. It'll be 25. Because you're a veteran, I'm not going to charge you now.
Okay, thank you.
We do it in Detroit, and they open up all stores like this, and you patronize them. So stores like this, you have to patronize.
They're gonna have a nice event coming up next month in March. They're gonna have a 60th anniversary for the church. It's been there for 60 years, so
Yes.
I'm gonna tell them that I invited you.
No,
and
but
they can get their outfits.
yeah. They better.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow.
Those are supported women of Kenya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's beautiful.
The place that we got this from, I've been shopping there for like 20 years.
And they are staying power.
I mean, they're really, and the reason why they're able to stay is because of support from people who realize the rich heritage, of the artifacts. So, yeah, we appreciate it. We enjoy it.
He said I can take like 5. From Nigeria. Okay. The drama. Okay. And this is my young youth. He's a youth. Yeah, he does very good work. He teaches kids in Nigeria. He's in school himself. He's in college. And this one is artist from Tanzania.
What's your favorite thing about moving here?
I really like getting off campus and just like hanging out in places like this. Just like is very refreshing.
Yeah.
If you stop by Recycled Modern, tell her Lisa says hi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But she's that shop is very cool. Lots of art there.
Cool.
She hosts events and stuff.
Oh.
And so like the other time she had this like artist over who was drawing like portraits of everyone who came in.
That's so cool.
Question. I met Sherry, and like she had a table vending at one of the events. And I think she was like across from me at Soho House, the first one I did, and that's how I met Sherry.
Came to the show I was curating, and then water. Thank you. It is key.
Okay, boom.
I also love the Tupac shirt.
Thank you. Me and my mom thrifted it together. I was like, okay, mom, look at us finding things together.
Bonding.
We're shopaholics together. I told her I needed to get a pair of shoes, and we hit like 7 thrift stores. And I was like,
Did you find the shoes though?
I did.
Really, this is like my it's like my home base on the South Side type shit. Yeah.
More than just commerce, small businesses are a mosaic of many, many moments of connection, giving birth to the close-knit community that is Hyde Park. What are the personal stories of some of these small businesses?
My business is Recycled Modern. I am the owner. The way that I shop for Recycled Modern is anything that's either unique or modern, classic. Definitely do like the designer pieces. And I listen to my customer, but I feel like I have a certain customer that understands my aesthetic, and so they love what goes into the shop.
I am the artistic director of the Hyde Park School of Dance. The whole vibe of our school is inclusivity, diversity, and making sure there's no barriers for people to dance, whether that be stereotypical body typing, financial issues, ability to pay. We want to make sure everybody gets a chance to dance that wants to.
I am the founder and CEO of the Black Beauty Collective. We have a collective of 54 Black-owned businesses. The Black Beauty Collective is the first of its kind. I actually developed a model that's more beneficial to the entrepreneur versus to the owner of the business. And so entrepreneurs rent shelf space, which is not a unique concept, but they also get 100% of their retail sales back.
I mentor young artists. Mostly they were the homeless artists. So I teach them, I say, art is a business. Tell your mind, tell your thinking, tell your that art is a business. A lot of them, I taught them how to make jewelry, and some they were painting about people to teach them if they want to paint, how to start their painting. So I said, then you sell it. You can sell in the street.
You're from Japan? You live there? You never see them?
Which one? Like.
Well, we come from Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire was a French colony, and I'm very proud of telling myself that I'm the first person bringing Sahan in America. So it's from my grandmother, who was a queen, my great-grandmother actually. I moved here with my family in 1994, and we started like 2 businesses right away, one in the suburb, one here, Sahan's motherland African hair braiding.
I'm president of Betty O Incorporated, which is a day spa. This is my 45th year in business. We were the first black-owned day spa opened in America, I know. Day spa, it gives them an opportunity to be able to indulge themselves, which they did not have before, to come and spend a whole day pampering just yourself.
There's already a critical shortage of speech-language pathologists in this country. I think I'm the only black man in the state of Illinois with a comprehensive clinic. We are the experts in oral language. That includes listening, speaking, reading, writing, thinking with language. My youngest has been 24 weeks post-conception, born prematurely, with a tongue tie that was interfering with deglutition. My oldest has been 103.
My father owned Conan Stern Men's Clothing Store, which was in Hyde Park for 54 years. And subsequently, I also owned Joyce's Hallmark Store, which also was in the Hyde Park Shopping Center, and that was 24 years. Both of those businesses are now closed and gone. But after I sold my business, the Hallmark Store, I went into event planning, and primarily have worked out of my home for the last just over 20 years, almost 23 years actually, doing event planning. And I am doing event planning not just in Hyde Park, I'm all over the city and suburbs, but my office is here, my heart is here. One of the most wonderful and amazing things that grew from both my Hallmark store and my dad and my brother's menswear store was the camaraderie that we built with the neighborhood. There were actually people who would come to the stores, not necessarily to buy anything, just to hang out, to talk, to get the lay of what was going on in Hyde Park and who was doing what. And people would walk in and they'd see one another, and it was their neighbor or it was their friend or it was their cousin or whatever, and everybody talked to everybody.
Small business mostly, that's mom and pop stores. They cater and they serve the community 24/7. 24/7. They are there for you, and they don't serve you stuff made in China. We make our stuff. We create our stuff. Stuff made whatever, imitation stuff, Monsanto or whatever, generic engineer. No, we make real stuff.
Well,
The way Recycle Modern assists with community engagement is definitely on a social aspect, and bringing people of all different ages, backgrounds, diverse cultures, and bringing them together in one space to celebrate different brands that are primarily African American, and locally based. Hosting different artists, it just brings the energy to the shop. It just adds that energy that the shop is. They tell their life story on a canvas, which is always fascinating to me, what different stages they are in their life. And you can always tell that by the pieces that they make.
And maybe there was a box, and the box was like this big. It was like a box like this, just about this size. And in the box, the manager in the store was sharing with me, all the brands in this box are Black women. All of them are Black owned. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Are there other Black owned businesses in the space? And she's like, no, they're all in this box. And I remember kind of thinking to myself as a Black woman, and just knowing that there are tons of Black owned businesses out there, right, in the beauty space. Like, how dare they box us in? Like, it's so many of us. Like, why are we in a box?
We like to interact with the people. We, small business, are people's people.
We have young people who volunteer who are our dancers here to help with the little children's classes and make those go smoothly. The little ones look up to them so much, so it's a big teaching, training community that we have.
What makes my business unique from over hair salon is because, first of all, to me, it's not really the chemical about your hair. I'm not someone that knows so much about hospital, because my mother was always using holistic way of taking care of me. I don't think she used any chemical at all, and she was so gorgeous. So I think that's why I took my, holistic way of taking care of beauty.
Well, a lot of times, social clubs or schools and things will ask me to come and talk about skincare. And it's something that most people don't really even think about. But yet it's considered a suit or a dress. Your skin you have to wear for the rest of your life. You would send your clothes to the cleaners. So where are you going to send your skin? That's body armor that you should have to take care of, especially with all the pollution that we have now. And they've been very into learning about it.
I had a little boy. He came to me, he was in the first grade, and the mother was very concerned. He had a speech problem. But he came to me, and he was also struggling in learning how to read, too. I wasn't surprised at all of that, because speech is the foundation, is the sound foundation. Speech is the foundation that we build in our brain to interact with all other sounds. So I started working on the speech articulation, and I said, he's having difficulty in reading in school too. The mother said, yes, sir. So I said, can I test him? The mother said, yes, he's in the first grade. So he came out 0.8. That's kindergarten. He's in the first grade. So I put him on an auditory training program, repetition and intensity. And in a year and a half, by the time he reached the 4th grade, he was reading on the 8th grade level.
Because you mentioned earlier that you joined this space because you ultimately wanted to help people and bridge that gap. Mm-hmm. Why did you specifically choose business as a means to do that, as opposed to...
Got it.
Yeah.
I am a firm believer that to be able to make long-term sustainable change, you can't give out free turkeys. You have to teach people how to hunt, and so their own turkeys. And so I chose this route in a creative way to change the model without going into being a not-for-profit organization or something like that, but to really help small businesses scale. So to come into the space, the most cost-efficient shelf space is $200 a month. That's like baseline. To get into the spaces, to be a part of a collective is $200 a month. The thing that's most appealing is a lot of the entrepreneurs are like, oh, I can figure out how to afford this. And so if you sell $500 worth of product, or you move $500 worth of units in a month, your fee is $200. And if you move $5,000 in units a month, your fee is $200. And so it doesn't change because you're making more. And so the goal with that is for the entrepreneur to say, wonderful, I did $5,000 in a month. I can put that back into this business, so I can hire social media, I can produce more units faster, I can do anything that you can imagine to help scale a business, and to kind of create a space where they can comfortably afford to be able to grow.
To empower the young people, to create jobs for young people so they don't be hooligans, be shooting. But that's what it is. When you create jobs that empower the young people, the economy goes.
You know, they say home is where the heart is, right? I put my entire heart and soul into this shop, and I think that is displayed the way that the shop looks, and the shop feels, and the fact that there are so many different souls that walk through this space and curate the space themselves, like with the artists. I think that is the soul of the shop, which is why I feel like people connect with it.
We live in an age where a lot of people say become an entrepreneur. You should be an entrepreneur. You can make your own hours. You can travel wherever you want. It's unprecedented amount of money you can make. You can change generational wealth and all these things. But being an entrepreneur is difficult. It's a lot of work. It's hard sometimes. And that's not everybody's calling either, right?
Just making the choice to actually come in the shop, and even on the slow days, appreciate the shop for what it is, and finding stuff to do, and understanding the ebbs and the flows of owning a business, especially these winter months.
This is a picture of me when I was marching with Dr. King when he came to Chicago for the marches. He came here in 1967, I think, for open housing, because the state was the most prejudiced. This city was so prejudiced. On the north side, I think it was, we were marching for open housing because if you wanted to, and Hyde Park at that time was also the same way. If you wanted to rent, they would say they had nothing available. So then we would take one of the Caucasian marches and send them in, and they have an apartment available. Blah, 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 blah. I remember also there was a black restaurant here called Gladys Restaurant that she did soul food. And she wanted to move to Hyde Park, and they would not allow her to. They told her that our residents are not looking for that type of food yet. Now we have 3 black restaurants. The Virtue is owned by a black person, the 2 up the street, and then one over on 50th, I think.
So can you tell me more about your history with Hyde Park and why you chose to establish your business here?
I live in Hyde Park. Okay, I was living in Hyde Park, and my children were going to school here in Hyde Park.
I feel like the shop belongs in Hyde Park. And Hyde Park in particular was very special to me growing up, because it was kind of like the space that we went to. It was like kind of our downtown area on the south side. It was where you get so many different diverse cultures, and it was leading with Black, which is important.
When I used to come in when I was living in Naperville, I would drive in and come hang out in like the Hyde Park neighborhood. And I thought there is such an energy here of community, but it's like city community. But you come into the neighborhood, there's like bands playing, it's walkable, everyone's nice when you walk into these businesses. You have a lot of legacy businesses here. And I just thought it was like the coolest experience, like being a person outside of the city and driving in.
I mean, one of my first images was you know, when we teach the little babies, we make a circle holding hands. And all of these different kids holding hands in a circle just was something like I'd never seen before. And I don't think you see it in many other neighborhoods. So I just love Hyde Park for that beautiful diversity.
63rd Street used to be the major commercial corridor on the south side. There were businesses and restaurants, and there were like 4 movie theaters on 63rd Street when I was growing up. So, but you were seeing the change already in the 60s and 70s, that it went from a neighborhood that I believe had almost 80,000 people at one time down to 15,000.
Stores, men's clothing stores, women's clothing stores, recreational clubs and entertainment spots, entertainers. This is where they would stay when they would come to Chicago instead of staying in the Loop. This is where the entertainers set up their residence. They were Chicagoans. They would live in Hyde Park. So it was really a place to where things were flashy. But now it's gone down.
The vibrancy, let's say the downtowns, and this was true with Hyde Park before urban renewal, you really didn't have to go downtown for anything. Your grocery stores were here, your movie theaters were here, or your furniture stores, anything you needed and could have gotten downtown, you could get in your local community. What happened with urban renewal, and a lot of this was before I was born, was a lot of those neighborhoods, things were torn down in them and they weren't replaced. Hyde Park went through its own set of deterioration. 53rd Street that we see today was not the 53rd Street even of maybe 15 years ago.
I grew up hearing the words urban renewal from my father all the time. I recall that when he wanted to expand his business, he was told at that time he couldn't because of urban renewal. The space he was referring to is still not developed or never really was, and funny thing that 60 years later it's still not urban renewal.
Where you saw an area that had been vibrant and it became dormant, there was a certain amount of deterioration that was allowed to proceed. The difference in Hyde Park was that people decided to invest and put money here, primarily because of the university.
And what changes have you seen in the business community?
Oh my God. It's a lot of changes. It's a lot of changes, especially for us small businesses. A lot of changes. A lot of changes.
I think I should maybe start with a vision of what I think the chamber should be. Look at the museum, which brings in like 1.2 million people. The university, between the school and the med center, also brings in a huge amount of people. And then I was at the Obama Foundation dinner 3-4 months ago, and Barack said, we're bringing 1 million people into Hyde Park when this building is done. So if you look at those 3 numbers and add them up together, you have probably 3 million people that are going to be coming through Hyde Park. And my vision there is that, well, if you got 3 million people coming to Hyde Park, you should be able to brainstorm some activities for the businesses that are here in Hyde Park.
Well, obviously Hyde Park is middle class income, socioeconomics, racial diversity, anchor institutions, and then also thinking in the future about what's to come. So we think about the Obama Presidential Center opening. That is going to be a major economic driver for the region. So if they're coming to Obama Center, they're gonna come, they're gonna take public transit, they're gonna pay to park, they're gonna walk, they're gonna see public art, they're gonna visit a restaurant, they're going, and then hopefully they go home and they tell people about it. So that way more people come. Changes the perception.
I overall think it's a good thing. Yeah, there is a lot of controversy over the creation of the center, that they're taking away Greenland, Park Forest, or not Park Forest, but Parkland, and it'll be an impact on the area. Even the golf course that's supposed to go in next to the Obama Center, you know, there's issues there that it's taken away from golf for the residents. It'll become a too expensive for the residents to get to. On the other hand, I see the economic benefits of the center.
Wherever you have economic development, when new property, new commodities, new resources come in, the property taxes go up. The question that we have to really ask is, what is the real economic value of those new entities? Just because a house is listed at $350,000, is it really, does it cost $350,000? It probably only costs $200,000, but because the market can push it, proximity, you're going to be living near the Obama Presidential Center, can push it, you're going to be living like blocks from a world-class golf course. That's why you're going to pay that extra $125,000. Local residents can't afford that. They don't care about the golf course. They don't care about the Obama Presidential Center. They care that their property taxes are going to go up significantly. So in Hyde Park, the same thing is occurring, trying to help homeowners, building owners, keep a cap on the expansion and increase.
Do you know why there are vacant shops in Hyde Park right now? Even though there's a large interest in running a business here.
Yeah, so I think some of the vacancy is directly contributed to rent costs, the rising costs. The University of Chicago has been very successful at making sure all of their properties are full. Some of our other properties have not been as successful. So that's something that we're always concerned about too.
I walk up and down and I see empty store, empty store, empty store, empty store. It infuriates me because this is a landlord issue. Rent them. Don't tell me you can't rent them. You can, you just need to work with people to get the rents where people can afford them.
So the people need housing, and the housing needs rent. You cap the rent, you don't go up too much on the rent, then the people, they can have the jobs. When they have the job, they can pay the rent. And this is the big thing that the city should have the housing. The housing is very important for people because when you have homelessness, then the economy goes down. Then the people cannot support the business. And the mental health comes in. Because people have to have shelter, which is homes, and they got to have jobs and to do business.
As a historical Southside neighborhood, Hyde Park is home to both longtime Chicagoans and the University of Chicago. How do small business owners and community leaders feel the university shapes the living dynamic of Hyde Park?
The University of Chicago being an anchor institution as well as a commercial real estate they have their property manager and a commercial real estate engine. They work very well with small businesses because they have commercial real estate properties. They are very intentional about the business mix that they get into their properties. So making sure that it's, when you think about, like, for example, university property, we have Sweet Greens on the corner next to the Silver Room, which is a retail and art-based retailer. And then next to that, we'll be having a restaurant come in.
So the way that the University of Chicago has supported the shop, so when I was in my Lakeview shop, I attended an accelerator program through the University of Chicago, and I had a group of fabulous people that I connected with, and one of the spaces where I wanted to scale was like opening up a space on the south side of Chicago. So that was like a huge part of like the university assisting me with like the space. It's like making it available and approachable for me to be here.
Are you a U Chicago attendant?
I'm not. This is not a part of U Chicago. But they reached out as soon as they caught wind, because we were on ABC News a few weeks back. And so as soon as they caught wind, and a couple other publications did stories, they reached out immediately. And they actually shared out that I was looking to hire. And so they've been amazing.
So The university has supported us in, mostly in use of space. So we have our annual Nutcracker at the Mandel Hall space, which is just kitty corner from here, and that is an amazing space to be in. It's a historic theater, and the university supports us being there every Nutcracker, and that's a lot of that is thanks to the civic offices of community engagement at the University of Chicago. And now we also work that way with the Logan Center. So we are arts partners with the Logan Center. It's just for our dancers to be able to go into these amazing spaces and get that experience. It's life-changing for some of them. And space is a commodity down here. There's only so far you can expand without getting into spaces that maybe aren't as safe for kids to come to and things like that. So over the 30 years that I've been coming to Hyde Park, it has expanded and it has grown, and the university has really helped with that and has bought land and buildings and helped, make Hyde Park a little bit bigger and a little bit safer.
The primary business of the university is to create an environment that's conducive to the educational needs of its students. Problems that the University of Chicago had was what this area looked like 20 years ago. And students would come, and there is more attraction, not just of local residents, but of national and international students. So you come to a city like Chicago, you've heard of Chicago, a lot of people have. You come here and all of a sudden Hyde Park does not have a lot of nightlife, it does not have a lot of restaurants, it does not have diversity of food, it doesn't have the familiarity of what a chain would bring. And when you go to other campuses in the country, when you go to a Harvard or Yale, or my daughter went to the University of Southern California, that community is very enclosed and it's there for the students. Anything they want is there. So all of a sudden, the University of Chicago is competing against areas that have much more comprehensive entities than it has, and those students go elsewhere. Well, all of a sudden, nightlife, restaurants, amenities, luxury apartment buildings become something that the university needs to attract those students, and it needs to be in close proximity.
I would like to see more family-oriented stores. There are people that have said that Hyde Park has become too big store-oriented. We have Whole Foods, we have a Target, we have a Trader Joe's, we have Chipotle, we have McDonald's, we have Starbucks, a lot of big chain stores.
So wait, what restaurants do you guys usually go to, if any, like during the year?
Medici. Yeah, stuff is like very close.
Oh, you're repping Medici.
Sort of Daisy's, Jade Court, or Bob's Pizza, because I'd never been so far north up to is this 52nd? 52nd, right? 53rd? Yeah. Because I'd definitely been to the street with Small Chicago and Kilwins and hit a lot of restaurants there. But anything up here in this court area, never been to.
Yeah, I didn't know this court existed.
Explore. I think we do the same
a lot
spots.
of takeout too.
Yeah. Uber Eats.
Yeah, and a lot of Chipotle, Sweet Green, Strings, yeah. But the more chain restaurants.
So pretty expensive to eat out. So you go with kind of what you know that you like, because you're if I'm gonna spend money, I want to know it's gonna be a good meal, especially when you're on the dining plan, which we are.
And I think maybe for students that are coming in, the parents are happy that we have a downtown that looks like home. All the big stores are there. And then those who complain say, well, all the little stores, there are not as many. Where's the bookstore? Where's the family-owned bookstore?
53rd Street is seen as the flagship for the university, in the sense that when parents drive down 53rd Street, they see Chipotle, they see, what's the hamburger place? Five Guys, Small Cheval, they see Starbucks. That tells that parent from Washington, D.C., from Fairfax County, oh yeah, it's okay. They have all these great restaurants. It's safe. So I think the challenge is balancing the needs of the community with the needs of the university community, and they're not always the same. The best example is Target made a technical error when they opened up. Since their shelves were stocked with things that were student-oriented, they didn't have things that the community wanted in a typical Target. One woman said, "You can't even buy needles there." You know, I sew, and I can't believe Target doesn't have needles. I have to go all the way to a different Target on Roosevelt Road to get needles.
I used to always say to whomever I would hire as a new person, as a sales associate in my store, I would always tell them, especially the University of Chicago students that I hired, you are living in a big city, but you have moved into a very small neighborhood, and everybody watches out for everybody else. I would like to think it's the same today. I think it very much is, but again, incorporating the university students along with the people who are entrenched here is really important.
What a lot of people are told is, you're coming to the University of Chicago, we have this large student population, that's going to be your target market. I've watched businesses come in by that and fail. I've watched people come in and they're told this. Well, the university population is enough to sustain you. And that's one more closed store front that's going to happen.
Husky was originally set up as an incubator for small businesses. And many community businesses felt that it turned into a social club for University of Chicago student businesses. So they pulled out. Now, again, it's building, and they're building it very differently in terms of recruiting business and students simultaneously so that it's a balance.
The university has put a lot of attention, and they have a whole team that does it. So strategic marketing and events that attract visitors to the area and really increasing foot traffic in Hyde Park. An example, during the pandemic, they gave out micro grants to like hundreds of small businesses in the 11 communities they serve.
The beginning of the COVID epidemic, they had a grant for small businesses, and I was lucky enough to receive, I think it was $4,000.
Why do you think they did that?
Because they're part of the community. They're the biggest part of the community, the University of Chicago.
Oh my God.
What's your name, ma'am?
Patricia.
Nice to meet you,
Robinson.
Patricia. How long have you been in Hyde Park?
Well, I grew up in Michigan and I moved over to Chicago in 1972, and I got my condo in 1978.
Wow.
So I've been here for a while.
Yeah.
And one thing that I liked about it is everything was pretty much places that I could walk to. The businesses have been owned by Jesus, I can't talk. University of Chicago. So they're charging a fortune for their rent. So people have been leaving.
The University of Chicago isn't like a state college where it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of a community. And those needs of the university many times clash with the needs of the community. So what happens is you have the elite, educated, the young, the up and coming against the townies who basically have stayed here and called this home and lived here all its life. So that natural tension of, I'm only here to use your resources for about 4 or 5 years and then I'm off to the other place, versus you're using resources that I can use and you don't contribute as much to those resources and you don't care about them like I do. That tension is going to be there.
How is it having the university as your landlord?
You don't have no choice in Hyde Park. They're the one that own the properties. But I'm grateful because they've been good to me. Yeah, they've been good to me. And I'm not the only one because they own all these properties. So, but I was grateful that they accepted to give me this, to rent me this place. So there is, a little bit of upside and down, which is in business is like that for anybody, when you do business.
What do you mean?
I mean, business, landlord in business with a lot of people, they just move because the agreement, you get to be in peace with the landlord and tenants. Yes, because a lot of people moved out because that's what it is.
When Polsky was expanding and they bought the building across the street, I think it was like a hairdresser in there. It was a little like dollar store was in there. They told that dollar store, and the dollar store wanted to stay. They told them, no, you get out of here.
The reason I have to move location because I was on 53rd and Harper. The University of Chicago bought the building, and I was devastated because then I still have a contract with them. But how the whole thing's turned around for me to move, they want me to move out of there. I was really devastated. I was in the newspaper, they took me to court, people was standing for me. In the Tribune, that's the Sahan, that's one of that, because they were moving all the small businesses for the franchises to come in. So I feel like the beauty of Hyde Park was being taken away.
I used to be on the other side over there, 1456 East 53rd, by the church where Five Guys are. That's what used to be our store. Then when the university sold to them, so I was nowhere to go. Then I asked President Toni Poikwinkle, because she was our alderman before she became president, that if she could help me to get a place for my business, because I'm going to be, out of the business. She was very nice for me. I wrote her a letter, a proposal. She was very nice to me. She picked up the phone and she asked the university if they would grant me this place. Because the gentleman who used to be here, he had passed away, Mr. Richard Boyajin. Also, he was my friend. Very good guy I think he was from Nepal, but he was a University of Chicago alumni.
University of Chicago is one of the largest property owners in Hyde Park and commercial corridor, but we do have others as well. They don't make up the full. They're roughly, I believe, 20% of the businesses. I think it's 20%.
What happens is once you get fewer property owners, you get less housing competition, so to speak. So what that does is create, let's say, rental properties. You have few people controlling a lot of properties, so there's no incentive to compete for people. So you can keep the prices high, you have enough amenities. People are going to want to go downtown if you build enough amenities. So you can keep the prices high. And that's what happens when you have a monopoly or a duopoly, and that would be any neighborhood. What that also does is it creates kind of a self-sustaining environment where you can only rent to a certain type of people. You're looking to see who can pay the rent. And what happens is your property taxes go up, you improve the property value, and you see a less diversity in the types of businesses that are here.
I think that the university, one, recruits businesses that give them an image of safe, small town kind of idea. Two, the university has made major investments in the economic development. The university did a series of pop-ups to see how well they would do and how long they would last. The Silver Room is an example. It was a pop-up and it flourished and obviously has gone into a full full store of its own. But there have been several other stores that have been along that area. Denim, there was a denim company there for a while, and they only lasted like a year or year and a half.
The University of Chicago, to me, is just a place that's more into real estate than is in anything else. And that's kind of the way it operates. What has it done for the overall well-being of humankind? It's come up with enormous systems for economic manipulation and suppression and oppression.
The bakery right at 55th and Lake Park, it just closed today, and it had been there for years. And then also the French restaurant in the shopping center, it all closed, I would say, in the last month. And it's because the rent is so high from the university that they can't afford to stay. So that's hard to deal with. But like I said, I'm pretty much close to everything that I need to get to. So
How do you feel about the businesses closing? How do you feel about the businesses closing?
It's sad. It's because, it's all that I've known. When I was moved here in 72, they were here, and now they're gone. And so that's hard.
You don't go down in Hyde Park. Up. Okay? Hello? Rent in Hyde Park goes up. See the gentleman who was here, my customer? He's been here many times, and he was telling me that he wanted to move to Hyde Park, but Hyde Park is too high. He really would love to come to Hyde Park, he said, but the rent here is too much. Do you know anybody, Mama Rose? Even in the adjacent community, I would like to come and, rent over here because he lives in the north state. My wife was passed away. I would like to come back this side now.
I'll tell you what happened. When we were closed down, I had a lady, and she'd only been coming to me about maybe 2 years or so. And she was here before they closed. They were getting ready to close us down. And she said, may I speak to you? And I said, yes. And she said, I was told that you were going to have to close for a while, but I'd like to do something to help you. Not that I have a lot of money, but I have enough to share, and I'd like to pay your rent for 3 months. And she did. So you make friends, and people wanted to see that I stayed open, because a lot of businesses did not make it at all. They closed. I mean, businesses who had been in business as long as I've been in business, they just didn't make it.
These rent increases, and it has forced some businesses to have to move out of Hyde Park and go to a more economically feasible community, and rethink how their business plan is. And I mean, it's something that I wish we all could solve. I'm not sure what the answers are to that.
Can you tell me as much as you're willing to share about the experience going to court and fighting for your original space?
Well, I mean, the experience was like some lawyers I didn't have to. They took over because they really was trying to really make sure that the university don't really kick out like small business. At the end of the day, the university makes lawyers. So who can fight them, But I know the Tribune was in the room. They were recording everything, and they just talk about me in the Tribune. They didn't say Sahan won or University of Chicago won. They just say we have understanding. They just, the judge, recommend for them to give me back some of my money, and then that's what happened. They gave me back some money so I would be able to rent another place. Yeah, the way they did the calculation, they feel like this is all I need. But to me, I needed more because my list was not over yet. So I feel like they should give me a little bit more. Yeah, to just help me out as a small business and a African American woman entrepreneur, so I can come back on my feet, because I have to do everything of myself. To relocate, I have to do a special use license, which cost me about almost $10,000 just to have this special use license, because I'm changing the place. So it was not easy. So I mean, at the end of the day, University of Chicago got what they want. So I would say maybe they won, because that's what they want, and they want this space.
We get into the group think that says, okay, I've got this big university degree, I've got all these credentials, I'm supposed to be like this. And we get locked into that, and so we don't stoop, because that shows that we're not superior, we're not strong, we're weak. People are going to see us differently because we actually bent our knees, and we miss that we need a trauma center. The person who died needed to get to the hospital sooner. We're losing lives, and when we start to lose 20% of our lives, then that community says, okay, you don't really care about me. We need to stoop down. It's not a university versus towny thing. It's people.
With the medical center, same thing. You have international researchers coming to the medical center to do things like stem cell and laboratories.
Every major medical institution in this country, I'm talking about the major ones, are located in poor communities. Woodlawn. They just in the past few years starting to clean it up. But you go all around the country, it's the same thing. What's the real intention of these institutions? Is it self-preservation to the point that you just erode and corrupt and destroy everything around you? Can they afford to have programs that would help the community? I think they can. I think a guy told me, he says, that University of Chicago has so many millions of square feet of rental property. So many. That they're making $1 billion a month on rent. But all the area around them, those ignorant folks just shooting each other, doping each other.
Well, there's one more piece that I didn't share as a kid growing up in Woodlawn. Where Booth School is right now, I was walking down Woodlawn, and I was like a freshman or sophomore in high school, and I was stopped by the University of Chicago campus police and told, you don't belong here, go back to Woodlawn. And I got ready to argue with him, and I've always said, you don't argue with the police, So I went back and told my dad, who took me back up there. Fortunately, we didn't find the guy, because my dad would have gotten arrested, I'm sure. But the point is that that's how the university historically has been.
I came into this job with a job that I already had. I am a community leader. Okay, I'll put this on camera. Protest against University of Chicago police. I got the University of Chicago police to make changes because I threatened them with legislation. I'm still threatening them with legislation. The things that they were doing a decade ago, they stopped doing, because I had, and still have, but had at the time, a young black son who would have been subject to that brutality. And my son was going to grow up and not have to deal with that. And I couldn't change his behavior. That's what we all try and do. Well, if you don't do this, you don't do this. No, I'm changing the whole system. Don't stop a Sawyer. Really don't stop anybody.
The University of Chicago is the only major institution in the United States that will not reveal its real estate holdings. Matt will not reveal it. And I think that's, so when you have something like that, then who's running the shop? Who's running the shop?
Every single one of my thousands of clients was like, they know I love Obama, you know. So one time he was coming, he was in Hyde Park. I see. So one of my clients was coming up. She says, you know, your sweetheart is downstairs. I see tons of people. I'm like, the whole Hyde Park was crowded. That was the same time I was going through with University of Chicago. That was the same time they were taking me to court and everything. I feel like I was going to explain to him, do you know that University of Chicago wanted me to move out of it? But that was too much time to take. So I was like, excuse me. I was telling everybody, excuse me. It was so much people. I was worried. Even the Secret Service couldn't even stop somehow. Okay. I'm telling you, I was straight. I was standing in front of him like, I say, oh, my president, you know, I love you so much. He was smiling at me. You know, he's tall and look at this short girl down here. I said, I thank God for your life. You know, I'm from the motherland. You know, I'm from Côte d'Ivoire. He said, oh, yeah, you from Côte d'Ivoire? He said, give me a hug. I was like, I gave him so tight. I was like, that's so funny. I gave him a big hug. And, oh, my God, girl, I gave him a big hug, and the beauty of it is that when I gave him a big hug, like I was still holding him and he was still shaking everybody and we were both holding each other. That was so awesome. So that made my world. Yeah, that gave me peace to move. After that, I said, I don't care about the University of Chicago. I hugged the President of the United States of America. So now I can move peacefully. You can have your building. I was like, you can have your building, I'm gone.
The university obviously has huge investment in this community. Is their investment of any greater value than the family who's lived here for 30 years and invested? They've invested everything in this community. The university has invested a lot, but they haven't invested everything. So who has greater claim, 30 years, 40 years, investing everything? Or the university investing millions?
Since you got into this space, has there been any communication with the university?
No. Because this building is belong to a different company. And I'm hoping that, please don't sell it to the university because they always want to give it to somebody that can pay more money. We just really want to stay in Hyde Park.
People who live here don't mind having more amenities, or in any area. We don't mind having more amenities. We don't mind better housing come up. We want to live in that better housing. But if it starts to outstrip our ability to pay for that, and we've been here a while and we've enjoyed, and we've been waiting for this progress to happen, and all of a sudden we find not only can we not afford that progress, but our neighbors are threatened, the stabilities of our neighborhoods are threatened, the fabric and the strength of those neighborhoods have been all of a sudden threatened. And now, in addition to one or two people who say, I can't live here anymore, your whole network of neighbors and community and the fabric of that neighborhood changes. And the rapidity of how fast it changes, that's when you get a lot more of the tension, what we may label gentrification. I personally think there's a way to mitigate that. I have not seen the will in a lot of cases for us to mitigate that.
All my clients was, right, they signed a petition for me to stay. They want me to be there because they believe I'm here, I bring something different. They believe not only that I'm from the motherland, they want me a part of Hyde Park. And I was there way before most of those franchises that was coming new, even though they have the money, but they still want to see the beauty of the mixture. Not only that an African-American entrepreneur, a woman entrepreneur, and then I'm right here in Hyde Park and fighting to be a part of the growing of Hyde Park.
I think these universities, the large ones, can mitigate that. If you're going to enclose yourself in a community and cordon yourself off, that's one way to mitigate it. The other thing is to learn to live within the community that you're placed in. I watch the tension in this community. I live here. I'm not an alum or really affiliated in terms of faculty or staff here. I watch that tension play out. Chicago is a bigger city. Chicago is a better city. It's not to denigrate the smaller cities, but the University of Chicago needs Chicago more than Chicago needs the University of Chicago.
Do you think that there's communication that occurs between, for example, the university and local residents?
Interesting choice of word, communication. I think they attempt to communicate with each other, but I think they, and not just the university and community, but various entities speak different languages. About how often we leave a conversation thinking we know what the other person is talking about, and we don't. I think the university is guilty of that, but so is the community. That's why in elementary school, going to those various campuses and seeing those cultures was an eye-opener on so many different levels. Even the language was an eye-opener for this kid from Woodlawn. So I think the university needs folks who are from the community, who are bilingual.
Had some of my clients have even said, hey, when the University of Chicago closed its outpatient speech and language program, they were saying, well, hey, Arnell, you know, why don't they provide you with some space or something and have an outpatient clinic? They all came back with a frown on their face. These were some people high up, too. They all came back with a frown.
You can kind of talk about this like moral responsibility, but an organization structurally has a lot of diffusion of accountability, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You know? What would you respond to that narrative?
I like the term you used, and I've not heard, diffusion. I think that an example is when the university often hires a diverse, multicultural affairs dean, or that takes the rest of the university off the hook. You know, so we've got somebody and that's their job. Therefore, I don't have to worry about it. That's their job to make sure that students of color are taken care of.
UChicago students, though inseparable from their connection to the university, play a dual role as consumers and residents in Hyde Park, living here for 4 years at a time. How do Hyde Park business owners perceive the role of UChicago students in Hyde Park?
The University of Chicago student, I mean, because then I have tons of clients that was there from there. They support me, they fight for me. I mean, they want me to stay there. And they are one of the reasons why I didn't want to go too far from Hyde Park.
Have you seen any changes in the number of students throughout
Yes, not as many as it used to be. And it's because I think why is it? I don't know. But I know before We had a lot of students, and we would give, we still give discounts to students from the University of Chicago, and a lot of them just doesn't know it's here.
What do you think might have changed?
The people who, every generation changes. This is 45 years I'm talking about, and you just have to change with it, you know, go with the flow.
What people don't understand is it's very expensive to be a business owner, and it's very stressful. And so, like, moving with grace is the biggest piece. And I can't say this enough: buy a candle, buy a pen. You know, if you're gonna support somebody, you know, don't go to the big box places to shop for your stuff. You know, come here and, you know, we can work something out.
Tell me more about working something out.
That means if you want to see something in a space, then I'll make it happen. And you let me know what you want to see in the space. And I can make it happen.
So what would you want to share with the young people at the University of Chicago?
I would like for them to come out from them books. Because books is not, that's nothing but a theory. It's not really reality. I know they don't have to, they can have books all the time, but come out also to the community. Interact with the community. Interact with the business community. Come and learn. Come and say, oh, what can I do with the business? What can I volunteer? It is very important for them to really practice what they learn in the books with the real reality, with the real community. Like what you are doing is very nice. It's very nice. Because the young people, you cannot just have books. No. When you come to the real world, you see it's not the way you learn in the books.
Even though it might be a small business owner and maybe they've had the business for 30 years and they never went to college and maybe they're running their business, the wealth of knowledge that person would have about running a business, operating a business, is probably far more than you could ever find in any textbook.
There is a lot of lonely and forgotten elders. They die by themselves. But if we teach and we channel our knowledge to these young people to say, you have the heart of caring for the elders because you will be older too.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, do we have to be afraid of one another? I mean, that would be devastating. Like, I'm afraid of you and you're afraid of me. How would we live? How can we cope like that? It's no longer going to be a neighborhood. It's gonna be very stressful and fearful. Like, everybody is afraid of everybody.
It really lended itself towards one huge family. And that is what Hyde Park has been to myself and to my family. The small businesses have struggled for so many years, as long as I can ever remember. We were always in fear of the next big guy that might move in and put us out of business. But for some reason, even though many, many small businesses have struggled here in this neighborhood, there have been many, many, many that have been around 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
My clients will come and bless me, they praise me, they say, "Son, we're so proud of you. You are one of the small businesses that's still, fighting to stay in Hyde Park." I always pray for my landlord to understand me, to say, I'm like, hey, look, my heart is there to, take care of my bills. You have to help me to stay in Hyde Park because that's where I started. And I really love the neighborhood. That's a legendary neighborhood.
We are in a recession for us, small business people. But everything can be, because I'm very optimistic. I believe in positive energy. That everything must be good. a question. Yeah, that's true. So you make the Google listen?
Yes, or Siri.
Siri?
Yes.
Oh, so she listens?
Yeah.
And then she tells you who is the...
Yeah.
How do you do that? You say you hold, where you hold?
You hold this power button. This one?
Yeah.
You try.
This one?
Yeah. Just hold it. Like press it and hold it. Yeah.
But it's not as good. Oh, they can do it. Yeah.
Aliwaita manabii wote wa Mungu bahari. Nabii Elia aliwaita manabii wote wa Mungu bahari. Lengo la Elia ilikuwa ni kumthibitisha Mungu wa kweli ni yupi kati ya Mungu wa bahari na Mungu wa mbinguni. Elia akawambia watu nikaribieni mimi, akachukua mawe 12 akaanza kujenga madhabahu, akaweka kuni juu